Good morning, everyone. So it's a long story, so I'm gonna try to make it short. So I'm gonna start by saying I'm a painter and illustrator, also a muralist. You might see a lot of my stuff around the city. I can say I'm a painter and illustrator. I'm an artist, and do my little artist dance. But it wasn't always like that. So I'm gonna take you to the beginnings, how it all started. That's me. I was born here in Washington, D.C. to Nigerian parents. And when I was young, I was born with, there was 2 other siblings. And my parents try to create an activity for us. So the activity was coloring. So they would give us coloring books. And my mom noticed that I was coloring more the comic book related stuff, because that's when I first had my first interaction with comic book art and art in general. So this photo, actually, the story behind it, we were at a party. And as you can see, there's a pencil in my hand. So I was in another room, and all the other kids were playing, and I was drawing. So this is where my mom dragged me out and told me to sit there. So that's what this is. So I've always been drawing since then. So once my parents finished their schooling, we returned to Nigeria, and this is around '82. So that's where the whole story starts to unwind. So I'm discovering like African art and all kinds. I'm still drawing comic book related stuff. So there was, at some point, my parents then decided to let us know, like, okay, playtime is over. That drawing thing you were doing was for children. So by this time in Nigeria, we're being coached to, like, you can find a career, like, there's engineering, there's, other careers. So I was still drawing at the time, and it started becoming a problem. So how can we ward him away from drawing was the next step. So I went to a lot of different technical schools, and I studied like electrical engineering and other things like that. And needless to say, I really sucked at it. So what would happen is my parents would come to school to visit, because it was a boarding school, and they would tell my parents, wow, your son is amazing. And they're like, okay, cool. And they're like, yeah, he's an amazing artist. And they're like, no. So they'll switch the schools. But the one thing that my parents didn't know was, because I switched schools so much, I would draw a lot in biology class. I would draw a lot in physics. I would draw a lot in like diagrams. So they didn't know that that was still drawing. So all they had to do was just push me towards an art-oriented school. But they kept pushing me deeper into drawing by putting me in all these complicated schools, like science schools and things like that. So eventually, at one point, I decided, okay, I'm gonna like, I kept drawing, and it was really, they saw it like a problem. So my mom, in an effort to stop me from doing that, sometimes she would seize my drawings. She would come to my room and seize my drawings, and sometimes rip them up to get me to stop, because it was becoming a problem. And it's just a regular parent's concern, like, they want their son to do well. So I started playing this James Bond thing with her, where I would hide my drawings in her room. So when she saw them, she would think, oh, okay, I seized those. But she didn't know that I was going back in there, and I would grab them. I would draw in my room and then put them over there. So So it was, we were playing like that back and forth. And so the more I kept drawing, and at some point, the barber shops started popping up everywhere in Nigeria. And the main thing was people using clippers. So I saw that a lot of signs were handwritten, or they really had like a ugly illustration just saying barber. So what I used to do was I would find wood and paint someone cutting hair with a clipper in a more realistic style. And I would sell it to those people. So then when me and my parents were walking down the street, and all these people around the town would be like, hey, that's that guy, you know, and then my mom would be like, how do you know all these people? I'm like, oh, I go to school with their children. So so we would walk around, and my parents were wondering, like, why are these people showing up at our house? Who are all these people? So I kept going, and so so this is a funny story though, because we have this deep religious background. So at some point my mom decided, okay, we're gonna pray whatever this distraction is out of you. So they took me to church and they prayed, and as a teenager, you're kind of wondering. So I went back to school and I was like, yeah, I told my friends that, and they were like, wow, you should try drawing right now. Just see if it really worked. So I drew, and you know how kids are, and they're like, whoa, I think you got better. Wow, you should pray some more. So, so then later on in my late teens, I had discovered hip hop, and hip hop really exploded in Nigeria in the 90s. So that's when I really came close to what I really want to do. So at this point, I'm starting to discover like the style, the album covers. I remember seeing a group called Organized Confusion, and their album cover was illustrated, and also the Tribe Called Quest album covers and so on. So I decided then that I want to become an illustrator. But by this time, we still have friction with my parents, so I decided to start writing my aunt, who was living here in DC at the time, to send me a ticket to come to America. And I was really, I was dead on coming to America to chase the illustration career. So I talked to people, and they were like, yeah, my idea was, you come here, and it's true, like, that's why I love this country, because it is the land of opportunity. If you come here and you work hard for something, you will get it in the end. So I eventually, in '99, my aunt sent the ticket, and I was ready to dive straight into the world of illustration, and this is where my real illustration story begins, as you can see here. That's me at Burger King. This Burger King is actually on Columbia Road, down the street from here. So I started my art career here, and as you can see, I'm hard at work. And so in the normal sense, I decided, okay, this is not quite illustration, so I decided to pick a job closer, security. So this job is where I ran into a guy who was working on a college magazine. So for the very first time, we went up to New York. He invited me to come with him to New York because he had to interview some hip hop artists. So I was so overwhelmed. It was my first time in New York. And so when we came back, I asked him, so how did you get to interview all these rappers and all these people? And he kind of laid on the bus and pulled up his press tag that he had around his neck and just kind of showed it to me and dropped it and fell back asleep. So when I came back to DC, I was like, okay, so you're trying to tell me because you had a press tag, you were able to go through all the record labels and the offices. So while I was working this job, I started going up to New York with a portfolio of drawings to different magazines. And the way I would do it is I would get to New York, stop by a newsstand, and flip through any kind of magazine. And in the first 3 pages of the magazine, I think there's an outline of the the staff, editorial staff, and then at the bottom there's an address or like a contact. So I would just go to Penn Station, look through that, and find the address. And luckily for me, a lot of these magazines were on Broadway, so I would just get out Penn Station and walk up into Broadway and go to these offices and just show up like, hey, I'm here to show my portfolio. And they're like, who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm an artist, and I'm an illustrator. So they would, at some point, some of the magazines were nice enough and they would let me come in and they'll look at it and be like, okay, we'll give you a call. And I was like, yes, so, but at some point, one of the magazine art directors was kind enough to sit me down and tell me, you don't do this. You have to set up an appointment. And I'm like, how do you do that? They're like, yeah, like a simple phone call. So he asked me if I was living in New York, and I lied, and I said, yeah. And he's like, okay, so in this case, just make a phone call in advance. And so I started doing this thing where, mind you, I'm doing that while I'm working security and at Burger King. So I would, on my days off, I would go to New York, and I would literally find the address, but then I'll stop by the payphone right outside that address and make a phone call, like, and make an appointment. Like, yeah, can I see the art director? And sometimes they'll say, okay, he has an opening at 2 o'clock, and I'm looking and it's 9 a.m. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So I started doing that. I would call them from the payphone, and one time I think I actually called the art director from the lobby of the same building. So this job, I kept doing that, and it was nonstop, and I started becoming that, surprisingly, people started noticing that it's you again, so especially a particular magazine. So at this point, so the thing about security, why I really love this job, was not only did it give me time to draw a lot, it's also a job that has, like, you have this responsibility to, like, people's lives are in your hands. So you have to, like, you're responsible for protecting people. And so I really took this job to heart, as you can see. That's me hard at work, protecting people. I'm sure the people felt safe after seeing me. But from this security job, eventually I kept going up to New York. I kept going back and forth. I never stopped. I also took up a job working for a moving company and at CVS, along with this job. Well, the Burger King job left. I had to leave that one. So I was working security and working at for a moving company and at CVS down on Pennsylvania Avenue. So this was my very first illustration for XXL magazine. Eventually, I finally got a call, and this was my very first job. It was challenging because I didn't know, like, all this time that what I was searching for, like, how hard it was. Like, my first interaction with an actual art director, and it was a little bit challenging, but I was so excited. I actually drew this at the security job in that lobby that you saw me in. I did this. So what was amazing, and I worked with them for about 5 or 6 years. So what was amazing, what they told me was usually they give their artists 3 weeks to a month to finish an illustration. I finished this in about 2 hours. So when they sent it to me, we talked, and I was so excited that I turned in this the next day. And not only did I turn it in, I went to New York and hand-delivered this. So with that, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just excited and nervous and everything. So after this illustration, I was in. So from there, I started using, I'm starting to get popular around DC and using the magazine as my tear sheet. So I ended up working with a lot of different magazines. One of them was While You Were Sleeping, which was also DC-based. DC Paul's magazine, it was like a little short, small magazine. And so at this point, I'm still working for XXL magazine, and this is another illustration that I did. at this point, I'm working at CVS still, and the security job. So the story behind this, I did a Biggie issue, and it was a full-page spread just like this of Biggie. So mind you, I work at CVS. So I showed one of the coworkers, and he didn't believe it. And he was like, so I was like, if you look at the bottom right there, you can see my name. So the guy was like, yo, for real? Oh, why are you working at CVS? So 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 I was like, oh, it's just illustration. I mean, it's like a one-time thing, so it's not enough. And he's like, no. So I'm in the break room. So there's a whole lot of chaos going on in the store. And so by the time I came out, everybody's like, whoa, can you sign this and all that. So they made a whole scene out of it to a point where the manager started feeling really, I guess he started having some kind of envy towards me at that point. So I would come in and he would say something like, oh, you're 5 minutes late. We all can't be superstar artists. And I'm like, well, last time I checked, Damien Hirst wasn't in aisle 12 cleaning up. I continued to work for magazines, and there was a pivotal point where I kept going to New York, and there was one particular magazine I kept going to, and I guess they got annoyed, and the art director he didn't embarrass me, but he gave me the best advice ever, which was, he told me, not only did he tell me I suck, at this point, he told me that I don't have a style. So now I'm thinking, what is style? So he described what he was talking about, like I should go back and study style. And this is one of those illustrations that I did. This was back in 2000. And what he was talking about was that, you see, this is supposedly Eminem, but what he explained to me, which is a gem, which I will never ever forget, was that he was saying, that doesn't look like Eminem. What you're doing with this is that you're trying to use the story around it or the background to cover up the fact that doesn't look like him. And when he said that, I went back to my studio security job, and I worked more. I tried to study what is style. So I looked at a lot of different magazines, a lot of different artists, and I saw a pattern. Like each artist, they had something that made their work stand apart by itself. So at some point, I went from this to this in 2003. So it's the same image, it's the same style, but this looks more like Eminem than the other one. So, and that was the whole process. So again, this is P. Diddy, the old one, 2003. And you can see, I was playing around with a lot of special effects. I put glitter on the t-shirt, like the jewelry, and I thought that was so hot, but it wasn't. The composition is off. If you really look at the face kinda looks like him. So with this was done in 2 years later, and this has more character. It looks more like him, the way the mouth is and everything. And this one is just embarrassing. So this is supposedly the Neptunes. And so I was trying to portray here like, oh, they have, like, their music controls the world. It didn't work. The faces are off. Again, I'm using the background and all the special effects to cover up the fact that this was a really bad illustration. So 2 years later, I redid it. And the one thing about style, again, if you notice the difference between this and this, is that I lay emphasis more on the faces, and the technique changed. So both are color pencils and markers. But if you can see in this one, the way I use the color pencils is more like it gives it an airbrush feel. So I'm gonna go back to a few other illustrations, and that's Ice Cube that I did way back in Nigeria, and this was '99. and then this was 2003. Another progression is Lauryn Hill. That's back home in Nigeria. I drew that, and this was 99. This was 2003, and this is 2013. So the process is like I constantly try to, I'm my own worst critic, so I constantly try to build up on it. And as I go along, as you can see, there's a huge difference between that and the other ones. And this image actually is that. But if you look at the difference between that and this, like there's a whole lot changed. So at this point, I'm gonna explain like my process. So how it works is I get the initial image, and I have to find an image that gives me the right attitude. So I'll find the initial image, and I'll build a concept or a story around it, and I'll do it in just regular ink. I'll go from pencil to inking it in, and then I'll add color to it with color pencils and markers. So that's the same process that I use with murals, which I'm going to talk about right away. So this was my very first mural that I ever did. So this is where I had to bid farewell to the security job, because there was a show called Miami Ink, and they picked 30 artists around DC, around the country, nationwide. So I was picked for DC, and this is where, this whole area is where you have on 14th and U, is where you have Marvin and all those other places. So this had to be done over the course of a weekend, which I ended up quitting and getting fired from the job at the same time, the security job. So when I did this, when they paid me for it, and I realized that I can pay like about 6 months rent and still have enough money to survive on, and that's when I started taking the mural seriously. So now I'm into the mural world. So this mural is one of my first. It's over there at Walter Pierce Park, around the corner from here. And I was starting to use, this mural was supposed to be spray paint oriented, and it's really sloppy in my own sense, because I didn't know how to use spray paint. I never used that medium before. So I kind of played around with it, and I did my best to try to render a spray painted mural. So I went after this mural, because I wasn't quite satisfied with it. I went and hung around a lot of graffiti artists, and I learned the art of aerosol. But the whole time, the graffiti artists thought I was trying to like tag or, you know, write my name or stuff like that. So by this mural, I had more control over it with the characters. And that's what I was hanging around them for, was the control of the spray paint, because aerosol paint is really hard to control if you've used it before. So by this time, this is my second mural, and I'm still getting used to the aerosol paint. With this mural is actually up the street from here, behind the Safeway that's on Columbia Road. And here is Duke Ellington, which is on Ward Place by New Hampshire and M, down in DuPont Circle. This is the tallest mural I've ever done. It's actually 106 feet high, and I'm really scared of heights. So, this, I had, the challenge was for me to be able to beat the fear of heights and actually finish this mural. And this mural took about 72 hours to make, because it was supposed to rain the next 2 days. So I didn't want to risk that, so I had to finish this mural. That was the challenge about this mural, along with the fear of heights. So I know a lot of people are familiar with this one. This was for DC Vote. So they contacted me, and when they showed me this logo, at first I was like, what kind of idea is that? But I kind of like it, because it gave me an opportunity to play with a different style. So by now, I have more confidence with the aerosol paint. So I used chalk to sketch it out, and then I used white aerosol paint to fill it in. And the thing that I like about it, it looks kind of like a Banksy. It has that Banksy feel to it. You know, it looks like I'm trying to make a statement, and I put it up there. So now you guys know that this is the logo for an organization called DC Vote. So Then, of course, this is another popular mural that I've done here in DC. It's the Ben's Chili Bowl mural. That's me vandalizing it over there in the corner. Don't try that at home. But yeah, so this mural was challenging because this is the sketch. This is the initial sketch. So they had an idea, and the idea was because if you get inside Ben's Chili Bowl, there's a bunch of photographs of celebrities who have been there. They wanted all the celebrities on the wall. So I had to, it was challenging to go back and forth in the creative process to explain to them, like, okay, this is not gonna work. If you have 40 people, you have like a comic book on the side of your wall, and nobody's gonna look at it. So at some point, I had to take the Ben's Chili Bowl staff, and we went across the street, and we looked at the wall, and I said, imagine you're in a car. So you happen to turn and look. You want something that, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, or 3 people that capture your attention. So eventually, they came down to 4, which they weren't quite happy with. So that's the stages. So I have the black and white, and then now I draw it in. We came down to these 4 people. And then from there, we have the finished product, which you see. And mind you, the background, I had to make it work because they wanted the ketchup and mustard feel. So it was really challenging for me to do this mural because, as you can see, the portraits are really on point, but the background seems kind of off. So I tried my best to come up with ketchup and mustard. I turned the concept into the train line. So you have the green line going across, and then the red line. So if you actually at the mural next time, if you're walking from this side in, it almost seems like the arrows are leading you in, and then if you're coming from the other way out, it also leads you out. So I was able to make the ketchup and mustard work. But here's another story about this mural that could have made it the worst mural in DC so far. They actually wanted the image of Obama to be him eating a half smoke. Yes. So I had to, at that point, I had to put my foot down and tell them it's not gonna happen. So they were like, how about you put the half smoke in between? And I'm like, it's Ben's Chili Bowl. It's not like, so that's the story behind this mural. And of course, this is the rest of it. So you can see like everything. Again, I try to sneak in some extra color and to fill it out, just to cover up some of the ketchup and mustard. So we go on to the next mural. This one is on Florida Avenue, actually 312 Florida Avenue. And this is where the murals start picking up, where not only am I getting more and more used to using the aerosol paint, I'm able to also manipulate some of my ideas. This series is called Reloaded, and it's just a way to inspire creativity. And I use that image due to, like, a lot of times you see a lot of action figures, and there's the part where they're shooting and then they reload with the clip in. So this is for like a creative way to reload, and it doesn't matter what the profession is, what you're doing. So this is one of my favorite murals because not only is it a part of my own series, they gave me full artistic freedom to work on this. And here's another one. This is over there on 7th and S by the Howard Shore Metro, right across from it. And this was for Heineken's Open Your World mural project. And I was playing around with the image of Marvin Gaye. I actually had an original painting of the same Marvin, but I'm playing now with 3-dimensional imagery. And that's why I wanted all the stuff to tell the story. Is almost like he's singing, so you can see speakers, saxophone, and records all in that. And now I'm still inserting the pencil into the piece. So this is more of a close-up look, and that's the original painting of it. I changed this was flat, as you can see in the original painting. So I had to turn that flat concept to this more of a 3D concept. And also, it's the same process as when I do illustrations. So for example, this mural was done for American Express, and it was for Shop Small. And this one is over there in the Eastern Market area by Virginia Avenue. So this usually starts with me having an initial concept, and this one they wanted something to show that to show not only the shopping local, but something to inspire shopping, and something that had to do with DC. So this was the sketch, and once the sketch was approved, I went into color, and then from there, we have it on the wall. And also last year, I did the Richmond Mural project, and this, again, the mural is across from the Hippodrome, which is kind of like the Howard Theater or Lincoln Theater over there in Richmond, Virginia. So this was the concept, the initial sketch, and this is what the finished mural looks like. So at this point in the future, as you can see, there's a lot of pencil references. So my work has been narrowed down to these 3 series. So I have Return of the Shaolin Pencil, and there's Reloaded in the middle, and the last one over there in the corner is called The Village B-Boy. The Village B-Boy explains where I'm from. Like, I'm originally from Nigeria, and so that has more of an African feel to it, and it just tells that story, and I'll show some pieces later. And then you have Reloaded. Reloaded, of course, reloading on creativity, and Return of the Shaolin Pencil is more of a play, like this kind of fantasy play on the idea of like the Kung Fu movies from back in the day. So this is one of the pieces from The Village B-Boy, where it explains like my growing up in Nigeria and being introduced to hip hop. So, and here's the Reloaded series, and this is actually the piece that inspired the mural that I did. And now, so these are the Return of the Shaolin Pencil pieces, and as you can see, it has like a whole fantasy feel to it. And this is another one. I don't know if anybody noticed who that girl is. Does anybody know? Okay, so how many people have seen the movie Wolverine? Okay, so when you look at it again, there's a scene where they're fighting, and then she drops and then turns. And that's what I used to do that. So next time you see the movie, just look out for that part and this part also. It's the woman from the Wolverine movie, but I just turned her around. So Return of the Shaolin Pencil also plays with the idea of the Chinese zodiac. So if you can see, there's a monkey, a horse, and a goat, which are compatible in the Chinese zodiac. And the same thing with this one, with the rabbit, the snake, and the dragon. So here's the painted series, the painted version of Return of the Shaolin Pencil. And pretty much that's where I am, so be on the lookout for a lot of these kind of themes. So, and here's my information, and thank you very much.